watching RoboCop. It came out on VHS and he had rented it. And I'm thinking, if my friends could see me now, I'm watching RoboCop. And my heart's beating out of my chest, my breath is getting short, I'm starting to sweat because I'm having a difficult time here, physiologically and morally, because I'm thinking, I don't think this is right for me. So I step back and I'm like, but I can't stop watching. This is what our kids are going through when they see something traumatic online. Yeah. So as confused and as horrified as I was also so curious and was just thinking, if I could just watch this long enough so that I can get the gist of a scene, then I can take this to my friends and say, hey, I watched RoboCop and here's a scene from it that I can prove to you I saw this. So rather than just keeping this conflict going, I thought, I'm going to let Dad make the decision of what I should be doing. So I walk around, I sit on the couch right next to Dad, and Dad's just tunnel vision. I don't even think he sees me. So I finally pipe up and I say, Dad, should I be watching this? And Dad, in his infinite wisdom, said, son, just because they're doing all that bad stuff on TV, does that mean you're going to start doing all that bad stuff? I'm like, no. He's like, then what's the problem? Don't do that. I think you can learn a lot more from a negative example than you can a positive example, and that was my negative example. I still haven't told my mom, by the way, that I've seen RoboCop when I was 8 years old. Next slide. Oh, another thing with parents, too, is so when we're having these conversations, we want to build this trust. We want to build digital trust, both non-digital trust and also this digital trust. So that cocktail between the annoying and avoiding parents, I remember my sister, she's 3.5 years older than me, and we were Christian educated our entire lives, kindergarten all the way through grad school. And I think my parents thought, as long as we keep them in a Christian school, we're at church every week, that things are going to be okay, we don't have to have the hard conversations because they're just going to be in this right environment and they'll just turn out okay. I always tell people I'm 44 years old, I'm 45 next month, and I'm still waiting on my sex talk from my parents. And then usually when I say that, people come up to me and say, hey, I'm older than you, and I'm still waiting to. Now, we figured it out, obviously, we got the 5 kids. But I think they thought if we talk about these hard things, they're going to be curious, and they're going to experiment and do all these kinds of things. But now add technology to it. They're going to start Googling this stuff. Would you rather them ask you these hard questions, or do you want them Googling it? Because if they Google it, they're going to find the stuff, and it's not going to be good. So my sister came home. She was probably 7th grade, I would say, from the Christian school. And she said, Mom and Dad, I just learned a new word. It's, and you can fill in the rest. Dad winds back. This is the 80s. Dad winds back to hit her. Misses because she leans back, hits the wall. Before Dad can get a second shot at her, Mom gets in between the two of them. And she says, Laura, I can't believe you used that word. That is a dirty word. We do not use that word in this house. Where would you even heard that word from? Was that from Karen down the street? You're hanging out way too much with that. You're never going to see Karen ever again. She's a bad influence on you. Go to your room. What did my parents just teach my sister? Yeah, they taught her that if you're confused by something, if you don't understand something, don't come to Mom and Dad with questions. They're going to try to hit you, and they're going to limit your friends. 2 things that young people don't want. So we want to do the opposite. We're going to learn how to do that. So this article from USA Today says, Communications Time Bomb. Parents' smartphone use could be the new secondhand smoke. On top, we need regular, quality interactions with parents, talking, listening, singing, reading, and playing together. It fuels the children's language development and their acquisition of communication skills. I grew up in the Metro Detroit area where they had a restaurant called the Sweeten House. Anyone ever heard of the Sweeten House? It was a buffet, and it was cheap, and it was wonderful. But the Sweeten House had 2 levels, at least the one we went to in Utica. So there was the lower level, which was the smoking section, and the upper level, which was the non-smoking section. I don't know who they were kidding. It was all the smoking section. It was like being in an airplane. Remember back when you could smoke in airplanes? There's no non-smoking section in that aluminum tube. It just doesn't exist. There was a time in Michigan, and it really wasn't that long ago, so 2009, 2010, I remember this because we did the news stories. Up until that time, if you were working for General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, you could smoke in the factory while you built that car, and no one did anything about it. People were blowing smoke at each other inside a confined space, and no one even thought twice of it. Isn't that interesting how culturally now it's like, oh, why would we do that? Because now we're at the point where if you have an at-home business where you see clients, like if you're a real estate person or an insurance salesperson or an attorney, if you see clients in your house, you are not allowed to smoke in front of them because you cannot smoke in the workplace. It's kind of interesting how that came full circle. But what we do, our children see, and our children oftentimes mimic. So is our phone use kind of like a secondhand smoke? Kind of like coming back from the bowling alley when we were growing up. It's like, we didn't have to smoke. We had clothes that were full of smoke coming back from either the arcade or the bowling alley. But that's oftentimes what we're seeing is parents using technology poorly results in kids using it poorly. Next. So practical tips for your family. Number one, post with permission. So we talked about just because you can, does that mean you should? So imagine if your child were to follow you throughout the rest of this week and take pictures of you all the time and post it online. Well, how would you think about that? I wouldn't like it. Like, leave me alone. Don't take any more pictures of me. But we do that to our kids. So why don't rather we train them that we don't just simply take pictures of people and put it online. We want to train them that you have to get people's consent for this. One way to do that is when you go on vacation, you go to the beach, you go to a museum, you do something fun together, and you take a bunch of pictures, and you say, hey, I took a bunch of pictures today. I'd like to post 2 or 3 pictures of you while we were here. Can you go through my reel here and just pick out the best ones that you think? And they'll look through it. They're like, oh, man, my eyes are closed. I look terrible in that one. No, I don't like that one. Oh, that one's really cool. Post that one, and that one, and that one. I look good in those ones. It doesn't take much, but you're training them that rather than that they can take pictures and put it online, get people's permission. It's all about respect and even showing them that respect, posting with permission. And then how can you get your kids involved? Next slide. Whenever possible, co-play. Co-play to the extreme. Whenever possible, do technology together. Help them see that online is a we activity and not just a me activity. Here's Chris McKenna, who started Protect Young Eyes. This is when COVID first broke out. He's got the TV tray going. He's working from home. His son is on his Switch. His knees are literally in his chest. You don't have to co-play that close. It can be uncomfortable. And one thing I noticed too is there's a full Hershey's chocolate package there. That's obviously not our house. That Hershey's would be gone pretty quickly. But they know what each other are doing. They're interacting with each other. I wouldn't know what Minecraft or Bluey are if I didn't have kids. But whenever new episodes come out, we watch them together. We build Minecraft things together. We do these things together so that we train them rather than them taking devices and running away. They have devices that we do these things together. It's an interactive thing, so we know what each other is doing. And when you show any interest, they want to show you more. I want to show you what I'm building in Minecraft. Hey, let's do this. Next slide. Some more practical tips. So not only posting with permission, you can get involved with co-play. Announcing your intentions. This one was big when COVID first happened, but it taught us a lot that we can carry through. So announcing your intentions helps you and helps them see that you're not a slave to technology. Because what happened during COVID was we're at home, we're on these Zoom meetings, and 9 o'clock comes around and say, okay, we have a 9 o'clock until 9:30 meeting. Our kids know that, and they're doing whatever they want because mom and dad are busy with technology. What we want to train them is say, hey, I have a 9 o'clock meeting. It's supposed to be over at 9:30. At 9:30, even if it's not over, I'm going to excuse myself and check on you. So between 9 and 9:30, I want you to build this Lego set for me. Or you just had a birthday, so you have some thank you notes to send out. Let's write those thank you notes while in this 30 minutes. So either way, I'm going to check on you in 30 minutes, rather than, hey, I know mom and dad are already on the technology, I can do whatever I want. I knew that growing up when mom picked up the wall phone. Oh, I'm good for the next 20 minutes. Because I know she just talk, and just tunnel vision. She doesn't know what I'm doing. So this just shows that we're not a slave to our technology even when we're working and we're still involved in their lives. Next slide. So pursuing that authentic connection. How well do you know the heart of your child? Remember, you can't outsmart them with parental controls, but if you capture their heart, you won't have to. Oftentimes people come to us and say, oh man, once this technology came out, it's a huge source of friction between my child and I. And so, well, how was your relationship prior to that? And oftentimes they say, oh, it's terrible. It's like, well, this simply reveals and aggravates what was already there. If you have a good connection with them, a good relationship with them, this is a lot easier. Next slide. We can grow up in homes in which the food finds the table, the money finds the college funds, and the family even finds the church each Sunday, but somehow our hearts remain undiscovered by the two people we most need to know us, our parents. When I was giving this presentation in Ohio, it was for a Mennonite community. And I probably should have done more research in Mennonite communities to see, what their culture was and everything. I had a pretty good understanding. But when I gave this slide, I had a woman stand up. She just started talking. I was like, okay, take it away. Like, this is what they do here. So she said, I just want to stop you right there. She said, that's speaking a lot to me, because she said, I grew up in a community where outward conformity was a big thing, our behavior was a big thing, where if you didn't act a certain way, you were shamed and shunned. But she said, one thing that my mom did for us, and she was a daughter she had several sisters, no brothers, and she said, the only lecture I remember that my mother ever had when we were growing up was she sat all us girls down, and she says, you know what, girls? I don't care if you come back home pregnant, drunk, high, in trouble, no matter what it is, I will not love you any less. You cannot do anything to cause me to love you any less. And when you come tell me of these things, you can confide in me, and I'm on your side, and I'm here to support you no matter what. She said, I never had more confidence in my entire life as a human being. I had someone on planet Earth who I could trust. When I was growing up, it was, we don't want mom and dad to find out about this because we'll be in huge trouble. We didn't want the pastor or youth pastor because they're just going to tell other people and make our lives miserable. We want to train our kids and develop this environment where when they get in trouble, they don't say, oh, mom and dad can't find out. It's, I need my mom and dad. I'm in trouble. We want them to have that confidence. Next slide. So we want to build this bridge of trust. In homes where digital trust is high, digital friction is low. Next slide. So you may be wondering, how do I build digital trust with my child? So glad you asked. Next slide. We're going to be just like this otter here. So we're going to practice being calm. See, he's not freaking out, he's not flailing. So don't freak out, don't freak out, don't freak out. It's not your fault. Be calm, be calm, be calm. In 2011, the original Minions movie came out. Remember the Minions, the little yellow people that have their own little language? So when it became available to rent, we rented that, and our oldest daughter, Ashley, wanted to see it. So yeah, let's sit down and we're going to watch this movie with you, Ashley. But prior to all that, at 3 years old, we began having conversations with Ashley and a lot of the other kids as well. But she was our first. And we said, Ashley, you know what? There is something out there called pornography. And what pornography is, it's either a pictures or video of people with little to no clothes on. And if you ever see that, we want you to put it down, like if it's on a tablet or a phone or a screen, you just leave the situation, come tell mom and dad. We will not be upset with you, we will be happy with you because you are separating yourself from that and you're doing the right thing by coming to us. I never had that conversation at home growing up. That word never even came up in conversation because I think my parents thought if we say something, then they're going to pursue these things, they're going to be curious, and if we don't say these things, they won't be curious about it. The exact opposite actually happened. So we trained Ashley with this. So we would give her a phone or a tablet and we would say, okay, Ashley, go upstairs. Now, in 3, 2, 1, pornography. She puts it down, she runs downstairs, gives mom and dad a hug. Okay, great, honey, we'd practice this week after week after week. We'd sit in front of the TV. Hey, pornography just came up. Oh, we gotta go. So she knew these things and she trained. So we're watching Despicable Me, and I get up in the middle of the movie to go to the bathroom. I come back through the hallway and I see Ashley there and she's in tears. And I said, what's the matter, Ashley? She says, Daddy, I just saw pornography. I'm like, come here, honey, so I give her a huge hug. I take her to the kitchen. I'm already scooping out the ice cream, and we're talking. I'm like, Ashley, you did the right thing. We trained for this. So when you actually saw it, you put it down, and you came and told mom and dad, this is great. And I'm thinking in the back of my head, what just happened here? So I had never seen the movie before. And she said, well, there's this part in the movie that you missed where the bad guy, Gru, is at this large piece of paper, it's an easel, and he's ripping off these pages. So he says, we're going to fly to the moon, rip. We're going to shrink the moon, rip. We're going to take the moon, rip. And the character's adoptive daughters had drew a picture, like a crayon picture, of him sitting on a toilet. And so he rips, and he goes, and we're going to sit on the potty. Oh, no, that's not it. So it was meant to be humorous. And Ashley said, and there was a picture of him on the potty, and I don't think he had any pants on. I said, oh, Ashley, that was meant to be more of a funny kind of thing. It wasn't meant to be pornography, but you're so sensitive to this, and you picked up on that if you saw something like this, you would tell Mom and Dad, I'm so proud of you, and if this ever happens again, I want you to do the exact thing. I would much rather have a child who's super sensitive to something like that, rather than seeing something like RoboCop or something else, sexual or something like that, and just not even knowing what to do, because they've never been taught what to do. So don't freak out, don't freak out, don't freak out. It's not your fault. Ashley, it's not your fault. You saw that. It was part of a movie that we were watching. You had nothing to do with that. It's not your fault. Be calm, be calm, be calm. Next slide. So does your child know beyond any doubt that he or she can land safely with you and land softly with you? If you've had this conversation with them, wonderful. Remind them of that tonight. If you've never had this conversation with them, please start tonight. Let them know that you are the safest person, that you can talk about anything. When I put this slide up at my church, when I gave this presentation, afterward, one of my friends came up to me and said, yeah, I used that, and I had a pretty funny situation happen. So his little guy's name is Jace, 6-year-old Jace. He's on a road where it's just some older girls that he would hang out with. You know, he's riding his bike, and the girls kind of, you know, they like little Jace, so they play with him. So he goes up to Jace and says, hey, you know, Mr. Armstrong told me that one of the things was, ask your kids what are the worst words that they know. Do you know any bad words? And Jace gets all red. He's like, yeah. He's like, well, Jace, can you tell me what those words are? What are the worst words that you know? What are some bad words you know? He's like, Dad, I can't tell you. He's like, yes, you can. I want this to develop now. I want it to be where you can trust me, where I just want to know what these are. You will not be in trouble by saying those words. He's like, well, Dad, those girls down the road, they use all kinds of bad language. And he's like, let me have it. He's like, all right, Dad, you asked for it. They say words like butt and stupid and dumb. And he's like, whew. That was going to be something else, and it may have been something else. But we would rather know what those words are from our parents rather than kids who either may not know or do know and try to teach our other kids that. Next slide. Why kids look at pornography? Often it's not their fault. Here's why, and here's what to do. Next slide is a QR code if you want to scan that. We want to have conversations with our kids, just like that. We want age-appropriate conversations with them. If you are, once you're ready to have these kinds of conversations, it's usually too late. Usually our kids are ready to have this conversation well before we are, so you can start early. And one of the ways to do that is simply by saying, you know, son or daughter, going online is similar to going for a hike in the woods. So when you go for a hike in the woods, if you were walking walking on a trail, and an animal or even a person were to jump out in front of you and scare you and startle you, you would let Mom and Dad know about that, wouldn't you? Of course you would. Same thing happens when you're online. There are things as you're going from site to site or doing various games where things may come out that make you feel unsafe, scary, confused. I want you to put it down and tell Mom and Dad, you're never going to be in trouble for doing that. We're going to applaud you for doing that. We want to be there with you. And we'll probably be right there with you, next to you while you're doing that. But either way, we want this to be safe for you and have that conversation with them over and over and over again. Next slide. So what's the right age to talk to kids about pornography? Next slide. We want 10 before 10. So we want to have 10 solid conversations about pornography before the age of 10. We want to start at least 2 years before you think they might need it. Next slide. 10 before 10, making it a normal conversation. Next slide. I think it was, like I said before, and I keep repeating myself, but I think it was because my parents thought if we used a word of something that our kids are curious about, they're going to follow that and be curious. But yet, what they did, their avoidance of talking about it appropriately, led us to pursue it. Because what are Mom and Dad trying to keep us away from? You know, we never had that conversation. Next slide. So don't take a picture of this. It can be taken out of context. Make porn the most normal word in your home. You want to be able to appropriately talk about issues just like that. For some reason, we don't do a very good job at educating our kids on delicate topics, on sensitive topics like that. Next slide. So we use drifts conversationally into their lives. We want to do it during car time, meal time, together time, and bedtime. That should be the video.
I protect them, guys. One of the things that we say is 10 before 10. I want 10 porn talks before a kid turns 10. Now, sometimes parents freeze or freak when they hear this, but you'd be surprised what qualifies for a porn talk. Friends, I want drips through their lives. I don't want a PowerPoint with research. I don't want you to drown them with a porn talk. I want it during car time, meal time, together time, or bedtime, car time. You're going down the road. Honey, if you ever see anything that makes you uncomfortable, naked people on the internet, that's called pornography. You can tell me. I'm safe. That's a porn talk. You could be in the kitchen stirring food. They don't even have to be looking at you. Guys, if you ever see anything that makes you uncomfortable, that little funny feeling in your belly, if you ever see it, you'll never freak me out. You'll never be in trouble by telling me. Friends, that's a porn talk. You're tucking them in at night. Just say, honey, have you ever seen anything uncomfortable? Something that bothers you on a screen, a Chromebook, a tablet, even while doing homework. Listen for their response. That's a porn talk. Friends, if they're not rolling their eyes, you're not doing it enough. 10 before 10, that's a porn talk.
What we found out, so car time, meal time, together time, bedtime. Now, I know your kids aren't like this, but my kids do not like to go to bed. I know your kids are perfect, but mine do not want to go to sleep when we put them to sleep. We put them to bed. So this is a great time to talk to them about these things. They will talk about anything if they have to go to bed. They'll say, oh, fine, we'll answer questions, we'll talk about this stuff. So that's a great way of reassuring them, saying, hey, did something happen today? We can talk about this. So they can have that feeling through the rest of the night that they're safe through this. Next slide. Some more practical tips for your family. Be curious, but not condemning. We don't want to have these conversations with our kids to try to trap them and catch them and condemn them and judge them because they did things. We just want to be curious. We don't want them to feel, oh, mom and dad are asking questions, I'm going to get in trouble again. It's no, they're asking questions because they're actually curious and interested in what I'm doing. Practice, practice, practice. We want them to Google you. We don't want them to use Google for these things. We want them to ask you. Next slide. So to delay all addictive tech, after 8 years of talking to parents about these critical issues, we've never heard someone say, I messed up, I gave my kid Snapchat too late. Remember, they get one precious childhood. Delay is the way. Next slide. Philippians 4, 8 through 10, fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. Next slide. So this is the triune brain, and it develops through the years. So the sooner you put technology in it, it will stunt their growth, and it will impact them in each of these stages. So you start out kind of with the reptilian brain, where it's more regulatory. It says when you're thirsty, when you're hungry. It asks, am I safe? Then you go to the limbic system. It's a little more developed. Rather than just regulatory, eating, sleeping, it's emotions, fear, stress, anxiety. Am I loved? And then the neocortex, which doesn't fully develop, at least in guys, until about mid-20s, 25. That's the complex thinking. What can I learn from this? Our kids are mostly in that reptilian and kind of limbic system. And I'm glad technology wasn't around when I was growing up because I did stupid things. And I know it's easy to do these stupid things, but this technology just exacerbates it. So in 7th grade, I had a physical education class. And we didn't like what the teachers did to us. The first 20 minutes, they separated the boys and the girls. We had to wear these really short shorts, which are humiliating. And for the first 20 minutes of our PE class, it was the last hour of the day, we had to take the garbage out for the entire school. That was the job of the boys' PE junior high class. I'm still trying to get an attorney to take this child labor law case. No one's taking me up on it, unfortunately. But we were given 20 minutes, and the worst part of it was walking all the way up the stairs. We started in the gym. After you changed in the locker room, you go all the way up the stairs where the cafeteria was. And remember those really big yellow drum garbage pails? They had that real thick mill, clear plastic that you'd pull out, and people had dumped all their soup and pop and everything gross in there, and you'd sling it over your shoulder and go all over you, and you'd have to drag it all the way down the stairs, through the double doors of the gym, take a right and walk another 40 yards to get to the dumpsters and throw them in. We were given 20 minutes. It would take 25, 30, 35 minutes, and the PE teacher's just in his office reading or sleeping, or he didn't care. He didn't have to take the garbage out. So he was supposed to be supervising us. He didn't. As long as it got done, he didn't care. So we would mumble and complain. It would take longer and longer and longer until I figured out a better way. And to this day, if you go to my high school, there is now a padlock on the door in the cafeteria, and this is the reason why. So we're taking the garbage out, and I'm like, guys, have you ever seen what's behind that door there? And they're like, no, maybe a janitor's closet or something. So we go up there, open it, and it's the roof to the school. So we grab a football, and we start playing football on the roof, which is about 15 feet above ground level. And then I'm thinking, and we're playing, we're getting kind of close to the edge. So we're looking over the edge, and I'm like, guys, look over here. Here are the dumpsters. So rather than taking 20 minutes to take all these garbage bags downstairs, we'll just go 6 feet, pick up the garbage bags, walk out the door, thumbs away. We got it done in 3 minutes flat. Our PE teacher was like, how did you guys do that? Like, we have our ways, we're just really motivated now. So we did that for about a week. And then I started thinking, you know what? Why are the bags of garbage having all the fun? If they can go off 15 feet, why can't we go off 15 feet? So, all right, here we go. It was me standing here, Seth Terrell sitting here, Devin Anderson standing here. So, okay, guys, here we go. On 3. And we're 15 feet up above the sidewalk. 1, 2, 3. We jump. And this is the time where I wish we had this technology, at least a camera phone, because I did the sweetest Indiana Jones tuck and roll you would have ever seen. It was just how we planned it. Seth Terrell broke both of his ankles, got them both on his landing, landed too stiff. And then when Devin jumped, we didn't realize that the teacher's lounge window was right below where he was jumping. So imagine being in the teacher's lounge, whoosh, you see a kid fall off. Like, what just happened? So that put an end to our roof jumping days. I'm just so glad we didn't have technology, because imagine the stupid things we would have done online. But that's where they are. And they're on technology now. So they already have the trouble mentally doing things that aren't stupid. So don't put technology in front of them. Next slide. Delay is the way is not a no-tech strategy, it's a slow-tech strategy. There's no long-term risk in not exposing your children to interactive media. Next slide. So delay in the way, again, we believe kids should wait until high school to get a smartphone. We believe kids' brains aren't ready for social media before age 16. Next slide. Some more practical tips for your family. Interrupt your kid. Here's a good video.
I love interrupting my kids. How rude, right? But when it comes to their technology, I love to interrupt them. I want to do that so I can check whether or not they're hooked on their stuff. And they've known for a very long time that whenever Dad asks you to put something down, that's when you do it. And they know the reward from that is that most of the time when they want to play something, video game, whatever it is, most of the time the answer is yes. If they've proven that they're not hooked on it. That looks like this. A few weeks back, Blake was right in the middle of a Super Smash Brothers game, which is like a 3-minute match on the Switch. I was in the kitchen. I said, Blake, dude, I need you to pause the game, and I need you to come and help me empty the dishwasher. And you know what he did? He paused it and he put it down. And I said, Blake, good job. That's exactly what I was hoping you would do. Now, as a reward, you don't need to help me. I'm going to do it. He was like, awesome. Go ahead and keep playing. Because through training, he knows that if he listens to when Dad needs him to put it down, whether it's to help or just because I think they've had too much time, if they listen to that, then they know that most of the time when they want to play something, the answer to that question is yes. Because they've proven to me that the game doesn't control them. And they also know the consequence from that. If they get mad when I take it away, whenever the playing is gone for at least a day, I want my sons to figure out how to manage themselves and their neurological responses when it comes to screens. Interrupt your kids.
But have you noticed now that even today's games don't have a pause button? They want you to stay addicted to this. So it's, hey, son or daughter, I need your help with something. Oh, just hold on, Dad, and 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes. We just keep going and going and going because it's a multiplayer game and they're relying on me and we're so far ahead and we can't pause or stop these things. That's done intentionally. Next slide. So more practical tips, interrupt your kid. And even if you said no, teach them as if you've said yes. So for our family, and again, no judgment. If you use things that we don't use, totally cool. But in 2011, when Snapchat first came out, it was really popular, and our kids were very young. We thought, okay, why don't we test drive Snapchat to see what it's about, so that as they get older and they want to have Snapchat, we will at least be informed on that, whether it's a good choice or not. So in 2011, and it may have changed since then, but when we started in 2011, my wife and I downloaded Snapchat, and we put in our genders, and we also put in a few of the kids' future ages. So we put an 8-year-old boy, 12-year-old girl. So what would the experience be on that? And we couldn't believe the messages we were getting from dirty old men sending us pictures of themselves naked, wanting to meet up. I mean, it's like, these are like 8-year-old and 12-year-old kids sending us these messages. And these are fake accounts, but they were still drawn in by all these things. So we said, okay, we're not going to do Snapchat. And what we found about Snapchat, too, was Snapchat encourages incognito mode, and you can do things and not have to suffer the consequences because these things disappear. So anything, whether it's Snapchat or any other app or device or technology that tries to undo what I'm trying to do as a parent, very much against. So when people ask me, what do you really think about Snapchat? I say, well, do you want my simple, quick, pat answer, or do you want my raw, authentic answer? They always want the raw, authentic answer. I said, okay. Well, here's what I think of Snapchat. If Snapchat, I'm a nonviolent person, mostly. If Snapchat were a human being standing right here, I would punch Snapchat in the face and keep punching Snapchat until my hand got tired and I switched to my non-dominant hand. And then once they hit the ground, I'd start kicking Snapchat. And then I would cut Snapchat in 7 equal pieces and bury each piece in a separate continent so it couldn't respawn. People say, what do you really think of Snapchat? I'm not a big fan of Snapchat. But yeah, even if you said no, teach them as if you said yes. So I grew up in a home, and maybe you did too, where your parents just said, oh, we just don't do X. And you're super curious, why don't we do this? It was, we just don't do it. Non-negotiable, we're not talking about that. So we told our kids what Snapchat is and what it's all about and why we don't do Snapchat. So just because we said no, we're teaching them and educating them as if we've said yes. So we don't simply just say no, don't bring the subject up. It's no with an explanation. Next slide. So we want to digitally prevent harm. So out of the box, most digital devices are exploitive. We have to hunt for protection. It shouldn't be this way. Everything should be safe by default. We should have to actually hunt for exploitation. When we were growing up, we knew where trouble was. We knew the dark alleys. We knew the friends who had older brothers who had access to things. So we knew where to look for trouble. It wasn't just there for us. Now it's just there for them all the time, and they're being bombarded by this. Next slide. One other thing about that is, whether you're 4, 14, or 40, between 2011 and 2022, you had the same experience on Snapchat. There were no parental controls. So no matter what age you were using Snapchat, you had the exact experience no matter what age you were. So we want to prevent harm by wrapping our kids in multiple layers of protection. So the most effective and the broadest ones are at the bottom, and then we're going to work our way up. So of course we want to have the prayer at the very base of this. We need to pray for the hearts of our kids. We need the Lord in this. So we want to do the prayer. We also want to do the practical. Next slide. So we're going to go to the next one, relationships. Next slide. So Proverbs 4:23, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Most of the tech stuff that we talk about and the most effective tech stuff has nothing to do with tech. It has to do with the heart, our heart and our kids' heart. Next slide. So it starts with relationships, this digital trust, this modeling the behavior, pursuing our kids. Growing up, it was easy to be an annoying parent, to be draconian, to yes, no, everything. Everything's black and white. It's easy to be an avoiding parent. Just leave me alone. Right in the middle is that digital trust, and that middle is the most difficult, but it's the most effective. It's just like holding a bar of soap, though. If you squeeze too tightly, it's going to fly off the top. If it's too loose, it's going to fly off the bottom. It's a really difficult hold, but it's the most effective. Next slide. So these are the core values again: modeling the right behaviors, pursuing authentic connection, delaying all addictive tech, digitally prevent harm. That's where we are now. Next slide. Relationship focused. Wi-Fi. So once we get prayer and the relationships, we want to build on that with our Wi-Fi. That's the most important digital device in your house. The last time I counted, I think we have 26 things connected to our Wi-Fi. You have like the garage door opener, the refrigerator, the thermostat, all of our tablets and phones and all that stuff. Next slide. So you hug and love your router. I almost say that facetiously. Your core router is the most used and underappreciated device in your home. If you don't understand it, then ask your kid for help. That's coaching. I remember going to my grandparents' house, and I had the fortunate circumstance of them living right behind us. But I knew either Grandpa had moved the VCR or the power had went out. You just see 12, 12, 12. I'm like, Grandpa, just let me know when this happens. I'll set that for you. I was like 5 or 6, and I know how to do that. And I go back, and he'd have a piece of tape over it because he hated seeing it. I'm like, Grandpa, just let me know. I can do this. Kids know all this kind of stuff. Next slide. The ultimate guide to routers. So the next slide is the QR code, and I recommend getting this. It might be on the back of your handout, but if not, it's also here. We rate and test all of the major brands of routers, and we tell you how they all work. There are some free options. There are some more premium options. A lot of them are kind of middle of the road. Some are not really good, and some aren't really bad. There are a lot of really bad ones out there that really aren't protective, but there are a few good ones. Next slide. We found out that Griffin routers are the best that we've seen so far. You can have full control over your home network. I currently have the tower, and I also have some of the Guardians. Those are the extenders. And the nice thing is you can manage every device on your network from your phone. You can implement parental controls, monitor network security, keep an eye on your kids' internet no matter where you are. We used to, during presentations, pull out our phones and then turn off the internet in our house. Our kids hated that. My wife hated that. So we don't do that anymore, but you can do that. I could be overseas, I could be in Europe or Asia or Australia, and I can see who is currently on my router, which device and which person. So I know it's this person using this device. I can even see on the Griffin if someone's trying to crack into my network, what passwords they're trying to use, those kinds of things. Gives you the ultimate control. Next slide. So we talk about prayer, relationships, Wi-Fi, and then to the device itself. We want to get to the most parental controls that we can. Next slide. So these are two of the more effective ones that we found. We're going to complement your router with kid-friendly devices, phones that were actually made for kids. You have Gab Wireless and you have Bark. They both produce really good products. So I don't know why more people aren't playing in this space. I think it's a gold mine because you have what they call them, dumb phones, they're like flip phones. They can only talk and text. And then you have the supercomputers, the iPhones, the Androids that are capable of landing the Apollo mission on the moon 150 million times simultaneously. And that's not hyperbolic. They can actually do that. So you have the horse and buggy going 4 miles an hour, and the Ferrari going 240 miles an hour, and nothing in the middle. These are in the middle. I don't know why there aren't more people that are doing this. Next slide. So Gab Wireless, if you are interested in that, if you use the discount code PYE, you can get a better deal on it. Gab Wireless offers a non-social media, non-internet smartphone and smartwatch. Also has GPS, so you know where your kids are all the time. Next slide. Also Bark. The kids can't delete text messages, can't download workaround VPNs, or change the parental controls that you set. Next slide has the QR code. Bark is not only hardware, it's also software. We have that in our house. We have Covenant Eyes and we have Bark. What I really appreciate about Bark is they do a lot with social media and also texting. It's text-based. So my daughter was part of a group chat at church with some other girls, and the conversation came up asking, would you ever dye your hair purple or blue or pink or something like that? And one of the girls said, if I did that, my mom would kill me. That flagged the word kill on the report, so we read it and saw it in its context. Oh, okay, obviously it's not serious. But we appreciated that. What if there was someone that was thinking of harming themselves? We at least got that conversation at that time. Next slide. So you want to find software that works. You want to use monitoring software really early with every child so that they know it's just part of the experience. It's just part of using a device. It's like when you get into a car and buckle your seatbelt, or you brush your teeth before you go to bed. It's just something that you do. When you use technology, you use these controls. So on the very top, Covenant Eyes is image recognition. So it blocks pornography and it also monitors and reports. In the middle there's the screen time, the hourglass, those are for Apple products, and then the kite is for Android products. At least for like an iPhone or an iPad, there are 32 steps you have to go through to set up parental controls on that. We wish it were a lot easier. And then at the bottom is Bark. Next slide. If you go to protectingeyes.com, if you go to our device section, whether it's a smart speaker, smart watch, gaming device, we have all the reviews for these, and if they have any type of parental controls, we'll let you know about that. Next slide. So not only the device, but also the location. The location is very important. Nothing to do with the technology itself, but the actual physical location. Next slide. So the power of place. Bedroom, sleepovers, bathroom, buses, grandparents' house, we'll get to that in a second. Where kids and adults use technology has a massive impact on how they use technology. Next. The most dangerous places for kids to be online. Next slide is a QR code. This is interesting because I had friends that, in the summertime especially, when they didn't have much going on, they would go to their grandparents' house. And their parents thought, this is wonderful that you guys have such a great relationship with your grandparents. You're there every weekend. Boy, I'm so glad you guys get to experience this wonderful relationship with your grandparents. What was really happening was these friends and their cousins would go over to Grandpa and Grandma's house because Grandpa and Grandma went to bed at 8 o'clock at night. Grandpa and Grandma went to bed at 8 o'clock, and they would stay up because Grandpa and Grandma had HBO, Showtime, Cinemax, they had all the premium channels, and they would watch Smut for the entire night. All the boys would. They even had a system going where one of the kids would stand in the hallway in case Grandpa and Grandma woke up, and they would notify everyone else to get out of the way. So they had a whole rotation going there. So just because the kids are interested in going to Grandpa and Grandma's house, find out why they're going there. It may not be to have a good relationship with Grandpa and Grandma. Next slide. So here's the toxic trio: darkness, bedroom, boredom. This was big during COVID as well. That's a high-risk area. And whether you're age 4, 14, or 40, we tend to make better digital choices when we avoid that toxic trio. Next. So to the very top, and this is the weakest. We're going from the strongest at the bottom to the weakest, but it's still very important, the actual single apps themselves. Next slide. But it's quiz time. Sorry, I didn't warn you there's going to be a quiz. So this isn't for, it's not going to be graded, there's no permanent record. Anyone know what the one is on the upper left? Among Us. Very good. Awesome. Some people, sometimes I'm in groups of people have no idea what these are. Can someone give me a quick Reader's Digest thumbnail sketch of what Among Us is?
It's a game that usually is played online with groups of people where there's an imposter who prays around and kills other members secretly, but they lie to them and say it's not me, it's so and so, and they try to get other people kicked off, and it can be fun, but the whole basis of it is deception and death.
Yes, excellent description. Thank you. It's kind of like that old table, not that old. It's that table game Mafia. I don't know if you remember that, where you have like the sheriffs and you have the Mafia members and they're trying to kill people, trying to convince people, oh, it's not me, it's someone else. Same concept, and it's a multiplayer game, very popular. The note right next to it, TikTok. TikTok is probably the most advanced technology on planet Earth, at least what I've seen. If you do a video of yourself doing something physical, push-ups, jumping jacks, you do something physical, its algorithm and its image recognition can determine if you're right or left-hand dominant. Without even asking you or just seeing you, it knows. It can identify you by your walk, like your gait. If you have a certain gait, it can identify you. They're doing that in China right now, where they're identifying people by their gait, because if you see someone from behind, they can't do the facial recognition, but by the way they walk. Crazy stuff. And with TikTok now, I mean, it's the Pied Piper, and the algorithm is the flute, and kids are hooked. On the upper right, I should have that in 7 sections, just some people what I think of that. Good, Snapchat. On the lower left says Be Real. Anyone know what Be Real is? Heard of Be Real? So Be Real values and rewards authenticity. So if every 24 hours you get a ping on your phone, and it'll say time to update. So if I got that right now, I would say I'm giving a presentation in Ovid. Click, and then upload that. You have 2 minutes to upload it. So you have the streak going, kind of like the Snap streak with Snapchat. You have the streak going, so you don't want to miss your streak. You know, it's kind of like, oh, this is cool. I've been doing this for so long. I have my streak going. Next one, the photo. Instagram, very good. Instagram, we're finding out statistically that it's impacting girls, young girls more than it is boys. What Instagram does is whispers to its users nonstop, you're not good enough. You're not good enough. You're not good enough. When I was growing up, I knew at 3 o'clock I got to leave the bully at the playground and go to a safe place and then have to come back the next day. This bully never leaves. So in Instagram land, someone's friend posts a picture of themselves and they look great and they get all these comments and likes and shares and all these things. And then they post one of themselves and 4 or 5, 6 hours go by and no one comments on it, no one says anything, no one likes it or interacts with it. So they take it down because it's like, well, it's like I don't even exist. We were giving a presentation down south and it was at a Rotary Club. And before we spoke, there was a gentleman who was honored for 50 years of attending Rotary Club meetings. He hadn't missed one Rotary Club meeting in 50 years. I've never done anything for 50 years, much less go to Rotary Club meetings. But imagine in Instagram land, this guy gets to wear this medallion all around Ovid that says number 50 on it. So as he's walking downtown, people are slapping him on the back, giving him a high five. Hey, Mr. 50, nice work, good job. And then I'm walking around town, and mine says 2. What am I going to do with this? Whoop, I'm not wearing this. I'm not proud of this. That's what people are going through on Instagram. I don't shape up to other people, therefore I don't exist. And why do I even try? The planet, anyone know that one? Saturn. We're working with Saturn to try to get them to do better with their parental controls, because what Saturn is if you're a student, you upload your schedule to Saturn. What building you're in, what class you're in, when your soccer practice is, when you get picked up, when you get dropped off. Imagine if a pedophile got hold of that. You know exactly where your kids are. They don't have very good parental controls. We're working with them to try to do better. The play button? YouTube, good. And then the bottom right. Discord. And can someone describe what Discord is? Real quick.
Kind of like old school chat room?
Yes. It reminds me of old school MySpace almost, which is very customizable, video sharing, audio sharing, social media. It's a real modern social media just in the past couple of years. Now, these apps rate themselves, and they're not very effective. So there's one here that's rated 17 plus. All the rest are 13, 12 plus, 10 plus. Which one is it? Any ideas? Only one is 17 plus. Any thoughts? As of last year, when I asked this question last year, it was YouTube. It's like, wait a minute, YouTube's used for kids, and well, there's other things on it that got it that rating. They're back down to 13 plus. Discord is the only one that's 17 plus now. But they keep changing because the user base changes and people want them to change. And again, they get to rate themselves, so there's no third party that's rating them. We wish that they did have that. For the longest time, Twitter, which is now X, had the rating of 4 plus. 4. How many 4-year-olds do you know can read? But yet they can do Twitter? It's like, wait a minute, it makes no sense. Next slide. So if you go to Protect Young Eyes, not only do we have our device section, we also have an app section. So things you probably never even heard of, like Saturn or other apps, if you're curious about it, we get beta versions of a lot of these, so we're able to test these, try these, see it from our perspective, and then write about them. Next slide. Complete guide to deepfakes and AI for caregivers. This is the big one now. 15 steps you can take to help reduce the risk. Next. All of these pictures never happened. These are all fake. That's not really Tom Cruise on the left. That's not Keanu Reeves in the middle. That's not Robert Downey Jr. on the right. So Robert Downey Jr. does not have a deal with Nutella to be a sponsor. These were just made up. These are all fake. We're finding fake news reports and fake news video overseas, like in the Middle East, based on what side wants to convince you the other side is the more aggressive. So this is a whole new world. This is dangerous stuff. The AI stuff is the new frontier, and it's scary. Next slide. There's a QR code for that, or you can just go to our site and look up that. It's one of our more popular. I think it's also good for now. Next slide. So practical tips for your family, that 7-day rule. Next slide. So before your son or daughter downloads the app on your device, do what we did for Snapchat. Download the app on your device, create a test account using their age and gender, and then take 7 days to take a test drive to learn about the app, its features, dangers, to determine if it's appropriate for your child. Next. So the 7-day rule, and then parent-led device ownership. This is a really practical video.
From a very young age, I want our kids to know that every internet-connected device is co-owned. That means when they're little kids, we don't buy them their devices, we buy devices that we let them use. For your tween son or daughter, maybe you get them a hot pink Amazon Kindle, you name the Kindle Dad's and Lauren's Kindle, so that she knows there's nothing to hide. Technology is a we activity and not just a me activity. When your son or daughter is ready for a smartphone, Aren't I an amazingly kind, benevolent parent that I'm letting you use this device while you're here in the house? And even if you decided to pay for it yourself, whenever we have something that powerful here in the house, we're going to figure out together how I can still be involved. Because whether you are 4, 14, or 40, one-on-one with the internet, we eventually all lose. And trust me, that conversation with your teen son or daughter is a whole lot easier if you plant the seed early. We do tack together.
This really pushes against the idea that there's entitlement, where like the kid says, oh, this is my device, it's my phone, it's my tablet, I get to use it whenever, wherever I want, however I want. No, it's mom and dad's tablet that we let Ashley use, or it's the smartphone that we also let Aubrey use on occasion. And at any time we can say, I need that back, I need this right now, because it's co-owned. Next slide. So we advocate for change. So our policies as a society are antiquated due to the meteoric rise of smart technology and its accelerated development. Tech companies, policy schools, and faith leaders must do more. How can we get involved? Next slide. Children are a heritage from the Lord, and offspring is the reward from Him. Next slide. Here are some starters, some conversation starters we do for schools. So we're trying to really push for Tech-Free Day, where no one uses technology, so not even the teacher or anything. There are schools that do have tech days, where like if a kid doesn't have a device, they give them the device to use for the day. Don't do that. So we have some conversation starters, and we really push schools to do better. Next slide. This is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC. It's the cyber tip line. It's the nation's centralized reporting system for online exploitation of children, including child sexual abuse of material, trafficking, and online enticement. So in 2022, NCMEC received 32 million reports of online sexual exploitation. This is up from 16.9 million in 2019. It's up 89%. Now these reports are either underreported or not reported at all for the most part. So of the ones that are reported, it's gone up 89%. Imagine if you heard in the city of Ovid, car break-ins are up 30%. Huge news. Breaking and entries of people's houses up 50%, 60%. Huge. Everyone would know about this. But have you ever heard any of this? It's probably the first time. 89%. And people don't do anything about it. Imagine if there was an effort in the city of Ovid, across the street, to build a 5-story, 100,000 square foot building that would house the world's largest collection of adult material. What would we do? We'd be storming City Hall saying, no, 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 not in our community. We have churches here, we have school children here, we're not going to allow that to happen. And if it ever did happen, and our kids were near there, we'd say, you know what, if you're near that thing, go across the street, we don't want you near that place. But yet that building is in probably your pocket right now. And we give it to our kids and we say, have fun. You know, in Michigan, to wash hair at a salon, not even style it, to just wash it, you have to go through several hours of training. To operate a motor vehicle, you have to go through driver's training. When it comes to technology, zip. But the results are long-term. Next slide. Chris was able to testify in front of the Judiciary Committee in 2019. He was talking about the Child Online Privacy Act. Next slide. So what the act does is makes it so that if a child sets up a profile either on social media or on a device itself, it treats them like a child. So if it's an 8-year-old user, it already comes with parental controls and locks it down, rather than using it like an adult. So it's just real common sense. It did actually pass in Utah. The governor signed it. About a half dozen other states are debating that right now. We'd love to see it in more states. Next slide. So in 2022, Snapchat released its first round of parental controls. We said, good job, it's about time. Now let's keep it going. Chris was on the Today Show when this happened. But think about this. It started in 2011. Parental controls in 2022, 11 years. If you use Snapchat, you would have the same experience if you were 4 or 40. Next slide. So in a digital world that is increasingly hostile towards children, our response must be strong and relevant. We need to be prepared, balanced, and protected online. Next. Some more practical tips. The way you can get involved, you can contact policymakers. If you go to usa.gov/elected officials, you can get a list of all your elected officials on the federal level so that you can talk to them about these policies. You can create a community here. Oftentimes we'll hear people put their hand up and say, where do I get a hold of people who think the same way that I do? Look around. Start a tribe here and say, hey, you know what? Can we just all get together and just be conscious about this whole tech and how it's impacting our kids? It'd be great. Next slide. Again, families that do certain things persistently and consistently tend to have children who learn to use technology in good, honoring ways. Next. So we talked, the next 2 steps, so your router, we talked about that, the safe space being you, and now the table. Next slide. And the next slide. So this is still, and there's a video here. So the table is a product of Protect Young Eyes. This is kind of the what's next. So oftentimes when you come to a presentation like this, you hit a growth spurt, and then this is the what's next. So if you need more information, if you need help setting up your router, you can contact us through the table. There are free and premium options with the table. You can get all of our presentations on this, more webinars, more in-depth deep dives for information that you may be looking for. Next slide. There's a QR code. I believe it's also in the back of your printout. Next slide. Well, it's very ironic that we're on social media to talk about the dangers of social media, but if it's there, we're going to use it for good. So if you're on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, go to @ProtectYoungEyes, and you'll find us there. Next slide. So I leave you with this, Ephesians 3:20 and 21. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen. So as much technology is out there, there's immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine for the tech world. Thankfully, the Lord gives us immeasurably more than what we can ask or imagine. We need his help in this because even good families who have been trained can be duped, can fall into something. In March of 2022, so it was 2 years ago, almost to the month, in Marquette, in the Upper Peninsula, a 17-year-old boy who was homecoming king, football player, straight-A student, very involved in his community. 17 years old, gets a message on his Instagram account from a young blonde girl who he finds attractive. And she says, hey, I've noticed you around and I'd like to be friends. And he's like, I would like to be your friend too. So they started interacting on Instagram. And after a few days, she said, you know, I have a question for you. Do you consider us boyfriend and girlfriend? And he said, well, I guess so. I mean, this is what people have online relationships all the time. So yeah, I think you're my girlfriend. And she said, I'm so glad that you answered that because I have a surprise for you. And he gets this inappropriate image of her. He's like, whoa, I was not expecting that. I did not ask for that, and I do not want that. And she said, well, that's what kids do nowadays. They send these pictures. It's called sexting. And I'm sorry it's the first time you've seen that, but you're kind of behind the times because this is how people interact nowadays. So he said, now that you've seen me, I need to see you. And he said, no. This seems really scammy. I just got to know you. No, I'm not comfortable doing this. This is a hard no. More days, more weeks go on, and she is persistent. She will not let up on this. So late at night, he's broken down, and he just says, okay, if I do this once, are you going to leave me alone? Yes, no problem. So he takes an inappropriate picture of himself and sends it. He gets a message back saying, we need $1,000, or we're going to share this picture with your parents and all your friends on Instagram. He's like, no. Just got blackmailed. It's called sextortion. So now someone has a picture of him without his clothes on it. They're using the blackmail unless he can pay $1,000. So he said, I don't have $1,000. I'm 17 years old. I have $300 to my name. And they said, PayPal it over. So he PayPals it over. He says, okay, did you delete the picture? No, we're going to need $700. We need the rest of it. He's like, oh. So after some time, he says, and this was his last message on planet Earth, I guess you win. I'm going to kill myself. 6 hours after the initial blackmail, he had shot himself. And the reason why they found the people, there were 3 men in Nigeria who were now being prosecuted in the Grand Rapids area. They actually extradited them and brought them here. The reason and how they found them was that they followed through on their promise. They sent that picture of him to his parents and the friends even after they knew he was dead. These are the kind of people that are coming after our kids. That's why it makes it so important. And for all I know, he was from a good family and he knew all these things, but in a weak moment, at 17 years old, these things can happen. And at that moment, Jordan DeMay thought, it's better if I'm just not here to face this shame and this guilt and the shame and the guilt that my family is going to face. I just want to take myself out of this equation. So the stuff we talk about today is as serious as it can get. It could be the difference between life and death. So I encourage you with that tonight. And again, when God is for us, we make the majority. This tech stuff is surmountable. It's not impossible to deal with. It's difficult, but it's not impossible. Ben, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. I'll be here for questions. If you have any group questions, I'm happy to answer any of those, or comments. What I want it to be tonight is not just a simple, because I think a lot of people come to a presentation and just think, oh, I'm going to be told about all the wrong things I'm doing. I hope tonight is validating where you're doing things and just say, wow, okay, all right, I'm doing some things that were good. I hope that's the case for you tonight. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Dan. So a few things. One is if you go to the Heartland Church Ovid Facebook page, you're going to see links to all of the sites or links, QR code links that were shared here. So just hop over there if you didn't get a chance to scan them or whatever. They'll be there. And this is also still, I think, live there as well. So we're going to be cutting that, but you should be able to access that. If you want to go back on any part of the talk, you can access it there as well. Yeah, any questions for Dan? We want to leave a little bit of time to answer any questions that you might have.
And if it's a personal question, because some people ask questions like they have a custody issue and spouse isn't on board, I'm comfortable with that one-on-one, but if there is anything group, I'm happy to. Or comments. Was there any comments that? Yeah. Who's that?
So I want to know, and I'm just being straight here.
Sure.
My son's going to be 8 in April, and probably about 4 years ago, we eased our way into using social media for entertainment purposes because everybody that he spends time with, they're far away. They live far away because he goes to a private school and that everybody commutes to school. He doesn't have friends in town. Nobody lets their kids out, try to make friends with them locally. It's just not, it's almost impossible. And so we've had a lot of struggles trying to keep control of this thing. Limited time, and then we get lots of stuff. I guess my question is, how do we walk it back? How do we get control of this?
Sure.
Because I want him to be off the couch between 3 o'clock in the afternoon and 8 o'clock at night.
Sure.
And I almost can't, I have to physically take the phone out of his hand, turn it off, tell him to go outside, go to the, even all of his friends, that's how they communicate, is through Kids Messenger and Roblox, and they play games together, and they talk through FaceTime, and other than that, nobody has a phone on the wall anymore. So I bought him a phone for himself so that he wouldn't constantly have mine, and then out of frustration, I put it away. You're going to get back. So I gave him a dead phone,
Sure.
that just can be online.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm so frustrated because I would say to him, Isaac, pause that game because we're going to eat dinner. I can't, I'm in the middle of it and there's no pause button.
Sure. Right.
And, or 5 more minutes just till this is over. And the next thing you know is into the next thing. I'm just so frustrated with
Sure.
the technology. But if I take it away, we're going to have he's addicted. We're going to have a meltdown.
Sure. So what I would do to ease into that is you're going to start training him to realize that technology isn't the default. So where if we have some free time, it's not pull the phone out. Because that's what we do. When have you waited in a restaurant for the next table? No one's talking. Everyone's got the phones out, And even when they're sitting down having the meal, they're usually on the phones. So I would start saying, when you're interacting with friends, those kinds of things, it'll be between these hours or so, but any other times, we're going to be playing outside, we're going to be making sure you get your homework done. Give him some agency in that, because my son he turned 9 in January.
loves Minecraft, would play 24/7 and loses all sense of time when he's on that. So we say, I let him be part of this process, where with Duncan, I said, okay, here's what we're gonna do, Duncan, because we failed him earlier on, where it was, hey, this is a good activity, and then we lose track of our own time, and then he's been on this thing for 2, 3, 4 hours.
Right.
So we'll say, Duncan, we're gonna be better at this. We have not done a good job, Duncan, at monitoring this, because the more you do this, the more you'll want to do that, and that's how these things are. They're training you to get addicted to this. This isn't your fault. You are simply experiencing what was designed for you by a lot smarter people than me. So what we're gonna do is, Duncan, throughout the week, what we've been doing lately, especially during the school year, we'll say, Duncan, we're gonna do no Minecraft through the entire week. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But if you get all your schoolwork done, if you get all your chores done, you get your music practice done, if you do that throughout the whole week, on Saturday, we're gonna let you play your Minecraft. And he says, for an hour? We're like, no, Duncan, 2 hours. It makes mom and dad feel like, woo, you know. No, man, mom and dad gave me twice as much as what I thought. So give him agency. So let him earn these things, and not saying you're in trouble or you've been doing it wrong, son. It's, you know, we've got more information now. Make me the bad guy. Just say, I went to a presentation where I found out some more information, and just out of my own ignorance, I didn't realize what it's doing to you and getting you addicted to these things. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure all the major things are done, so that, you know, when there's default time, rather than pulling the phone out, we're going to look and see if dishes need to be done, or a room needs to be straightened up, or homework needs to be done. And then when those things are done, we're going to say, okay, you can do this for 10, 15, 20 minutes, or those kinds of things, and kind of wean him off that, and kind of start in that process, not straight cold turkey kind of thing. But then even be willing to him say, hey, you know what, son, for me personally, it's difficult for me not to do these things, because I got some free time. Here comes Candy Crush, here comes Township, you know, those kind of things. Whereas it's like mind-numbing. It's just, oh, I had a stressful day. I just got to get some dopamine one way or the other. Or doom scrolling, you know, let's get on YouTube and see what they think I want to see. But doing that together as a family and say, hey, you know what? Technology doesn't just creep into your life, son. It's creeped into ours too. And let's do this together. So let's do this together, so that if you catch me doing something, or like if I'm supposed to be doing something with you and I'm addicted to my phone, just call me out on it, and that's okay. It can be a two-way street. You can say that. Mom, get off your phone.
He does.
If they see me on the phone when it's, or no screen time hours,
Sure.
they will absolutely call me on the phone.
I done that too, and I'm like, oh, it's important, it's work-related. Like, Dad, no. That's not there. Yes, sorry,
I
go
like
ahead.
the idea of doing it together with them, because I have about 5 apps that are Bible studies.
Sure.
And they can quiz you, they can help with spelling, they can start very basic and then you work your way up. It's fun, you know, and I'm sure you've seen them, you know, and I use them every single day. I kind of get addicted to my Bible study quizzes. And I go, oh, I didn't know that, and then next thing I know, I'm in my Bible.
Sure.
Looking for, you know, it's like, so I like your idea of doing a game together with them and kind of monitoring. it.
Sure, because if we don't fight against that, here's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna grab my phone and go to a dark corner, they're gonna grab their device and go to their dark corner, and neither of the two shall meet. It is an extremely antisocial activity.
Yeah, it is.
And we're fighting against that. Everyone's fighting, adult or child. Anyone else, comments, questions? I want to be respectful of your time. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank you. I'm not sure, my kids go to a public school.
Sure.
And when they were in 4th grade, my son came home to me, he said, Mom, I seen, so they're supposed to have like this huge, you know, protection, so ads can't come up on their devices. Of course, everything's done, you know, with a tablet at school. And he said, Mom, there was an ad that came out with 2 men kissing. And I'm like, oh gosh, you know, they train, you know, trying to train the kids that, you know, whatever. And then it was like a month later, and he came home, he's like, another ad came home of a girl, and he said a swimsuit, which was, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's just, that's how it's working, you know, it's like how they're getting their foot into the door. And also, I don't know if anyone's ever heard, but my kids went to school with a boy, he was a very troubled boy, he didn't like in kindergarten. And, it was a year of COVID, and then when the year that they came back to school, so the kids were in 5th grade, so 3 years ago. somebody, they, I don't know, no one ever heard, after, which is kind of even more scary, but someone was watching him do it, like trying to get him to do it, so sad. But anyways, I thank you for, bringing the awareness and, I think as me, personally, parents of middle school kids, where it's like Lori was saying, all the kids do it, and then you feel like the mom that's like, oh, I'm letting them down, or I'm not, they're not gonna stay up with technology, or, it's all the lies and stuff, obviously, but, so how would you start? So like, my kids do have Snapchat. One of them got rid of it because they didn't like it. But the other one, is now like, it's all about girls right now.
Sure.
Stuff like that. So they're trying to always impress the girls, taking pictures. So how would you like tone down?
Sure.
Just slowly?
Yeah, and so when my wife is teaching at the athletic club, I don't think a day's gone by where she goes into the locker room and there aren't a group of girls TikToking at the time. And she's like, this is the locker room. No, we're not getting that. One thing that, I'm glad you mentioned it about, I'm glad your son felt safe to you, say, hey, there was something that we don't necessarily agree with that popped up. I'm glad they were able to do that.
Yeah.
And one thing that I found out with my older daughter, she, I think it was Pride Month, and we saw her Googling Pride Month, what does Pride Month mean, those kinds of things. So we saw it on her report, and we sat her down and said, hey, Ashley, we're talking about this. Do you have more questions about this? We talked about what Pride Month is, those kinds of things. And she said, well, I know what you and mom and dad, I know what you and mom think about this, but I want to see what other people think about this. So I think I wasn't doing a good job representing where other people come from. I think oftentimes, and this is extreme, but I think oftentimes we say, we're right, everyone else is wrong, we're smart, everyone else is stupid. So it's like, here's why we believe this, and it's the only way to do this. I think I need to do better at representing that. But when it comes to the Snapchat and everything like that, it will continue to go, unless we start, putting things in place. So again, make me the bad guy. I tell my kids, make me the bad guy. If the kids say, why aren't you allowed to have this? Oh, my mom and dad don't want me to because of this, and the other thing. So I would just say, hey, I got more information about this, and it's better to have less. The less you can do on this, the better. So where do you, son or daughter, think that you can reduce your time on this? Because they might have a really good idea. They might already be willing to do that, rather than coming down and, hey, here's the time you're going to be doing these things. Just say, hey, whatever you're doing right now, let's reduce it by whatever %, or so many days, or those kinds of things. And then I think we're going to find out over this time it's easier to do than what you actually think it is. And we don't have to be like everyone else, son or daughter. Just because other people are doing these things, the child who goes from 4 years old to 14 has a 10-year childhood before they get that smartphone. Imagine how valuable that would be. And you can't replace that with anything, no matter how much time you have. They may not understand it, they may not like it right now, but as they get older. Some presentations we've been to, they'll have people come up on stage who are college-age kids, and they're reassuring parents saying, hey, I lived in that house where they restricted a lot of things, and I didn't have the same things, and I was so thankful for that. So they will thank you someday. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but this is the first generation, this is the first year, this is the first experiment. I mean, this is difficult because we haven't had several generations. This is the first one. We didn't grow up in a world like that. So we're doing the best we can. It's a great question. Yes?
Don't let your kids share their electronics with someone else. I didn't happen to hear that, but that is so important because I saw some things on a 4-year-old that another 4-year-old put on. And it from a household, and that totally had ruined somebody.
Sure.
I've got horror stories that I've heard even today, so.
And even kids, if they get someone else's phone, they'll be doing things on that they wouldn't do for their own because it's, oh, well, now it's unfettered. Right.
So don't share future kids have to share their electronics. It belongs to us,
Right.
mom and dad.
In an emergency situation where your kid is with someone at a bus or in the playground, and a kid's like, hey, I want to show you something, and it's something inappropriate. Train your kids to say, well, what is it? Because if you've ever been in a group of kids and someone swears, and someone says, who said that? No one's going to admit to it, because it's like, oh, okay, now I'm in trouble. Or it's like, hey, I want to show you something. Well, what is it? Oh, yeah, I'm going to get in trouble. He's going to tell his parents if I show him this. Sometimes that works. Sometimes they're going to show anyway. And if they do show it, let them know, excuse themselves in that situation, come back and tell mom and dad, because, yes?
What are, I'm worried about predators getting
Sure,
started
me too.
on the internet. What are some of the apps that we should really be careful about that are maybe, you think that they're geared towards
Sure.
kids, but predators are really using them to get to our children?
Sure, anything social media, anything. We were talking before the presentation about, what was that organization you were talking about that had social media? They rated them from 1 to 5, was it?
Oh, that was just Freedom Center.
Freedom Center.
Yeah, they did that. I tried to get my hands on it, but.
So there's an organization that rates social media from 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best, and I don't think there were any 5s. I think everything was. They're predatory by design, unfortunately. So any of the stuff now. I don't put Facebook as an app, because if you're under 30, you don't know what you know what Facebook is. But I would say, so Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, all that kind of stuff, anything interactive, it's the same thing, different app, yeah.
So we do a lot of these things already in our house, and our kids have devices. But a lot of their friends have smartphones.
Sure.
So what do you do with your older children when they have friends over that have, they bring their smartphones?
Sure.
And maybe they're gonna spend the money.
Sure. I do the same thing in our house as I would if they were in someone else's house. I talk to the parents, and I just say, I'm not telling you how to parent. Obviously, we're choosing to parent our kids a certain way. We're not saying one way is better or anything like that. But when our kids get together, could we agree that they just don't do technology? So if our kids are down the road and they're playing with kids that normally have devices, I've talked to the parents and I've said, our kids aren't doing that right now. So would you mind them just playing outside if they do come in just to eat and everything? That's kind of fine. But if there's technology there, they're going to be really confused and kind of conflicted, and they're going to be uncomfortable. I'm not saying good, bad. I'm just saying they're going to be uncomfortable. So is it okay if they don't do the technology for that? So we assume when people come over, we assume that they're super strict. So we just don't do technology when people come by. It's just a rule. Because we don't want to put them in that situation either, where if they're more strict than even we are, to just say, hey, we're just not gonna, when you guys are, we'll watch a movie that we've known is appropriate, that kind of thing, but we're not gonna be on our phones while you're visiting.
So like if your girls have girlfriends that spend the night,
Yeah.
and they have, do you ask them not to bring their phones?
We put it in a basket, like overnight or those kinds of things, or if we know that they're not gonna pull it out, when they're playing outside of that kind of thing, they normally aren't, because they're normally hide and seek, or that, they're doing physical activities. But normally we have a conversation with the parents just to say, I don't know what you guys' rules are, what you're comfortable with, but we lean on the side of less, because I don't know where you guys stand when it comes to technology, so we just do less. Less is best, is the way that we interact. It's good. It's uphill though. It's tough. I just want to say what it is, because we don't want other people to think, we're the,
Right, and I can be more strict, and, a lot of my friends are Christians, but
Sure.
they still give their kids smartphones. and
Sure.
I know that when my daughter goes to their house, they don't have the same rules.
Sure.
But they're still good
Sure.
families, and I love them.
Right.
But I don't trust kids.
Sure. Right, and that's the thing. The kids have to understand, it's not that we don't trust you, it's we don't trust them, being with them, the predators, the algorithm, the things that they shouldn't be seeing. It's not that we don't trust you kids, that we don't trust them, and we're trying to protect you from that. And we don't want you seeing it from your own device or someone else's device. And we don't want to have that on their conscience too, where it's, my kid was exposed to something at their house on their device. And imagine imagine being that parent where it's like, I hate that. It's good. Thank you again for your time. I know it's not easy to do, but I appreciate all you being here today. Thank you.
And what you said about whether there's 2 people, 3 people here, I like to look at it as, thankfully, we're not called to feed 5,000. Only Jesus can do that. I can't do that. I'm called to share my lunch, and that's all I want to do. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
I've shared lunch with Dan before too. Let's pray. I think, we all have got homework to do and things we need to take care of. And I think it's awesome, those of you who are married couples here, for those of you who your spouse isn't here, relaying this information. I know it's going to be a challenge, but there's grace for you. So I'm just going to pray that the Lord would show us what next steps to take. Obviously, our church family and community, we're going to have conversations that will keep going. This is we're restoring the walls of our community, and so this is a big one. It doesn't happen in a day, but if we all do our part, it will happen in time. We're going to have children that are ready to contend with this world and not just resist it, but to overcome and be victorious in it. And so I'm going to pray. We'll get out of here. God, we just thank you so much for this time, and thank you for Dan and for protecting our lives. Thank you for the work that they're doing. We pray your blessing on them, God. I pray, Father, for the information that's been shared here tonight. Just your word alone is enough to give us the wisdom and the inclination to walk in the light. But God, we need information. We need to be informed. We need knowledge, and we pray that this knowledge be added to our understanding. And we pray now that you give us the next steps to take, the conversations that we need to have with our spouse, with our kids, with our neighbors, with our family members, that you would give us the grace to do that. We thank you that you're faithful to do that. We ask for it in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you, guys. And